Are we ready?
Yeah, go ahead and let them in. Good afternoon, everybody. Here we are again. We're going to start here again. Give us a minute, clear everybody out here of the waiting room, and we'll get rolling. Okay, let's get started. Well, thanks everybody for taking your lunch hour here to spend some more time with us. You'll be happy to know today is the final charrette review. And so I want to start by saying thank you to all of you and the amount of commitment that you've shown to contribute to the development of these plans. It's been very fun, very exciting. You guys have been tremendously engaged, and we really are grateful for that and appreciative. It makes these kinds of projects way better when we see great feedback and people who, in the end, want to contribute to making a great community. So thank you for all of that and all of that work. We know that some of it was hard and demanding on you. So again, thank you. And then I want to thank my team for all of the hard work in the hours over the last 3 weeks and trying to get to where we are today. So what we're going to spend the next hour and a half on is going over what we're looking at as our concepts, a single concept for each one of the different 3 sites. And then we want to talk a little bit about how that all fits together. And we've got some additional images and other things to sort of help you tie these pieces together. But as you can see, I wanted to just show you sort of our working environment and how the studio staff has really been cranking through options and building as we narrow information, understanding, and with tons and tons of discussion, getting to hopefully plans that reflect the vision and the goals that were put in front of us early on. I do want to say this though, as is with all of our lives, everybody doesn't get everything that they wish or dream or even want. And so this whole process is about balance. This whole process is about how do you take disparate comments, and there were plenty, and how do you create what you see as the best option to balance all those things moving forward. So I want to go back to the one thing exercise that we talked about during visioning, and that idea that, if you could choose one thing, what would it be for you to call this project a success? So when you're reviewing these concepts, remember some of that. Remember that it may not be everything that you said you wanted, but if it has those major components in there and it all fits together well, and it's a great addition to our community, we want to keep focused on those things as well. We'll certainly get into the detail, but we really appreciate the volume of comments, and those oftentimes are at odds with each other. And it's our job to sort of figure out how to marry those thoughts and ideas. So with that, let's get it rolling here. So you've heard me talk about the idea of the string of pearls over and over again, because I don't want to lose that thread, so to speak. That's a really important idea here. And what we're creating is this series of amenities into one large amenity for the entire community. It's a really important idea. And as we look on this next slide, several people asked me, well, some of this is hard for me to evaluate because I don't know what's going to happen in all these other places and how that all fits in. We talked a lot about the idea that we don't have to have the same thing at every location because of the string of pearls idea, because you can have things in one area and then that leads you to another because there's something different, and then to something else with a new offering. And so we wanted to start here because we wanted to go back to Jordan Valley and the Jordan Valley concept and the East and West Meadows, the idea that these three sites are that barbell, or the handle of the barbell that connects all of this stuff together. And so as you look, we'll start from west to east, from left to right. You look at West Meadows and the natural environment that it's going to provide, the trails, the open space, the creek, very, very natural open setting with some active but mostly passive uses that occur within that area, and connect back to the east to the RJC site. And so when we get to the RJC site, we get to the things that will occur there, which is the daylighting of the creek. We have civic space, we have park space, we have activation of the streets. We have some catalyzing development around it, and green space. We've got a dog park, we've got plazas and pop-up areas so we can have events and festivals. And then we're creating places for icons that need to happen as well. And so those are the things that start to occur as we get through the sort of urbanized section of the greater Jordan Valley plan. Then we get to Founders. Founders is focused on performance space with playground and that focus on that original spring water feature that's there. It starts to incorporate the interpretive nature of the history walk, and then having a programmable civic space. At Jefferson, we have the daylighting again. We have the redevelopment. We have these active and passive uses that are much more focused on in a park-like setting. We incorporate the art again, so art becomes a thread that gets woven through the entire thing, and then we connect back into the greater trail system. And then we get to East Meadows, and I think everybody is familiar with just the plethora of opportunity, open space, events, ice, the amphitheater, the art that's there, the baseball stadium, the commons, all of those components on the East Meadows. And so now you start to see this tapestry that's sort of being woven in the public realm about the things you can do, but it's not a green park repeated with a green park, repeated with a green park, repeated with a green park. There are things to do as you work your way all along them, and they're different. And so that experiential part of this that's really critical when you stitch all these.
Ken, you're muted.
Thanks. Let's go to the next one. Audio.
Your audio just got funky, Ken.
Next slide. Cody, take the next slide.
Sure. Well, I'll jump in real quick while Ken gets his audio squared away. But this is a zoomed in look now at what we have specifically been looking at and examining over the past 3 weeks, and how this fits into that greater string of pearls that Ken just talked about. So to the left on the west, we have our primary RJC site. There's a red dashed line that connects to the west. Yep, it's showing a connection to the West Meadows and then continues through along Water Street. To the east, it shows what we've been looking at for Founders Park and its relationship between RJC and 404 Jefferson. And then to the north is our 404 Jefferson site that we have been examining and putting together concepts for, and how it has a connection then to the greater Jordan Valley Trail and to East Meadows. So with that, we are going to take a look at what we're calling now, instead of ideas, we transition to the the terminology of concept. So we are going to go through 3 concepts. As you recall, we've gone through this narrowing process, what Ken had described as the funnel, and we've taken all of this information, distilled it down. We were, halfway at the funnel point earlier this week. Now we've distilled down and we're quite a bit further, and we have developed one concept for each of the 3 sites, RJC, Founders, and 404 Jefferson. So with that, Darren will walk us through our thoughts and our initial concept for the RJC site.
Thank you, Cody. And I hope everybody's excited about Friday, just like we are. We actually thought it was Friday on Wednesday. So we are having Groundhog's Day for a couple of days here, but we're super excited today. And we had a lot of fun looking at all these comments that you've provided to us to help us zero in on these sites. So with that, on the RJC site, one of the overlying things that we saw kind of repeatedly through there was, how do we unify better the 2 sides from Boonville to Main, knowing that we have kind of 2 distinctive flavors on each side, whether it's on the east side or the west. So we've done that, we think, through 2 or 3 different ideas and mechanisms here. So the first one really is this esplanade idea that came along when we were talking about the other sites, and I think that's going to be some overlying little idea that carries over to the other sites. But along Mill Street, you kind of see that kind of swervy line, that sidewalk line that carries from Main all the way to Boonville. It kind of goes into the park, kind of comes back out of the park, goes back into the park, kind of goes back out of the park. That kind of draws us along that and activates that Mill Street a little bit from what we're doing there. So that's one idea, just to kind of unify that street approach along Mill. So then the second thing we looked at here to try to get in this unification was this long, graceful sidewalk that we have from Boonville, the plaza there, when we have that activity corner. It kind of curves on through the site, goes to the west, dips down along the Streamway corridor on the west side, and then dips back up to Main and Mill, giving us this real gracious, generous, long sweeping walk that somebody could meander from one side of the site to the next and engage in all the different kind of ways that this Streamway presents us with, and gives us different kind of hardscape and softscape approaches to that, and the interaction that we have with those things. The third unifying element that we incorporated here was what we call these activity corners, or the hot corners, where we have Mill and Boonville. We've got a large activity zone, a large activity plaza at that corner to grab a hold of the university and that piece that's already really active there, and then incorporating a building with that plaza so that we have some kind of use for that, but it also provides plenty of ample space in there for things to occur and places and things to do there. So then on the as we go to Campbell and Mill, we have 2 different we have both those hot corners, so we're using pop-ups and plazas in that location, along with historical markers or iconic artwork in that location, to really grab that intersection, to really help activate Mill, really help activate this one-way approach on Campbell into the site. And then we've done that again when we go to Main Street and Mill to try to incorporate some of these pop-ups and some of that articulation. So to try to balance out the site a little bit more, just very small little things. These could be maybe leased out by the city. These types of buildings or pop-ups, they could be different variations of uses in there to do that. So those are the 3 big moves to try to unify the street, unify the site on that. So then when we go to the east side, if we concentrate on the east part of this park, you'll see along Mill Street the trees and that thick vegetation, or looks like vegetation. What we're really doing there, and we have some imagery that we'll be showing you, some pictures, some precedents that help understand that. But what those are, it's a paved area with different kind of ground surfacing, no shrubs. It's just trees with high branching, so that it's very permeable. When you're on Mill Street, you can see right into the park. It feels nice and airy, nice and safe. It's very inviting with the shade, different kinds of seating, those kind of things along there. And that's also carried over onto the west side, where you'll see that in their little thinner variations, but another piece that helps tie that together with that activation, a little bit more paving. The water connection this time, we've kind of reduced. There was some conversation, we love bridges, but maybe there was a few too many. So we have reduced the amount of crossovers onto the streamway at this time, and really put them in focused areas where we think they might mean the most. And then you can still really engage with overlooks and seeing how the daylighting occurs on the east side here. So that overlook then really helps. These bridges really also help tie Water Street together a lot better with Mill, and then just generally just within the site itself. The streamway, we've kind of concentrated on kind of narrowing that down. I think some of our last revision or last ideas, we were showing probably some over-generous water areas on here. So we kind of concentrated on bringing that down, even on the east and the west side, a little bit more, and then being able to engage a lot more with that water streamway on here. So one of the things on the east side that we've done, you'll see along that walk and on the I guess the north side of the stream, we have these little squares in there. There'll be little porches, little overlooks, almost like little rooms that you go out on these, and these overhang into that riparian environment a little bit. So you get a nice, cool vantage point looking down into the streamway. And there's also ways you could get down. If you're adventurous, you could walk from that walk down into the streamway, especially in lower times of water going through there. If you wanted to, for instance, walk underneath the arch, the Campbell Arch. Then on Boonville, where that daylights, the streamway where it daylights there, what we've done is kind of created a canyon there. So we're kind of doing a thing up on the top plaza there, where you can look down into the daylight area, either from that bridge or from the sidewalk itself. And we intend, or we're thinking of making that kind of these water cascade or water wall. So it would be water that's not part of the stream, but invented water that we would have, that it looks like kind of waterfalls or cascades down into this area that we would catch before it would get into the streamway. But try to make that a fun feature, something you might be able to hear, some noise or some water movement up on that sidewalk to attract people to really concentrate and have fun looking at the daylighting. Water Street, we kept that esplanade or that arcade again. So you can overlook, and different variations of overlooks along water, and then the walk that stitches it back over to Campbell on that piece. As we go to the west side then, up on the Mill and Campbell Plaza corner, we've also added another plaza onto the west of that activity corner that could be another flexible place on this side of the street, or really within this whole district, that kind of engages and does some different things with the open space that's provided on this thing. So it kind of is trying to funnel itself down from being a lot more hardscape, a lot more of that kind of environment on the east, and then transitioning down to this more graceful, more park-like piece, where now our sidewalks and crossings are engaging this water in different ways. And creating as big a open space, big as landscape area park that's pretty flexible on this side for different kind of activities that could occur just naturally, or maybe there's some other things that would get added to these spaces. But really prying open these big generous green spaces that we go. On this side, we've also created a dog park on Campbell, on the south side of the stream, a pretty generous sized area. We heard a lot about that was a good feature to have. down here. And then finally on Boonville, the food truck area, or on Campbell, I'm sorry, on Campbell Street, putting the food trucks on this street so we can have two different directions of how the food trucks might operate. And we have them pulling head in on this particular piece so that we could get a few more, or we could have pull offs to where we could get a few trucks in there on either side to do that. I think other than the other big thing we kind of have is these historic markers and the icons. I think we were showing those the other day. We've moved the gateway to the south on Campbell so that right before you come into this district, we would have some kind of more of a major kind of a gateway into this to announce your entrance into it. So we can probably move to the next slide, I think here. Then one thing we kept doing along this whole time, if you look at it sideways, it's kind of hard to tell how this unification works sometimes. So we started actually almost designing this in this vertical fashion to do this. And I think both these pictures kind of depict what these big moves were. So on the left-hand side, you're looking west, you're looking from Boonville towards Maine. And you can really start to understand how this swooping curve, this nice gentle sidewalk really embraces that water and grabs a hold of it all the way down from really being in a more of a hardscape, more urban environment down to a more graceful park setting to the west, or to the top of this picture on the left. But you can really see how that esplanade along Mill Street kind of zigs and zags back out, kind of manipulates itself, and then that walk along the stream. And then we also have walks and cross. We have many crossings across this, either on the hardscape side or on the park side. So some of these were actively engaging with the water. And then on the one on the right, if you look, that one will be going from Maine looking towards Boonville. So we're looking east on this one. You really can see how that park is pretty generous, but there's still a lot of hardscape pieces transitioning into it so that we can make that feel a lot more like tie both sides together again. And then we're showing carryover. There was discussion both ways on development on this site. We are just showing a catalyst development site on the right hand, up on the top of that hill to this point on this site. But I think it still shows that there's a lot of green space, a lot of park. Our team felt that there was enough conversation on that it was worth keeping that piece in. And we can probably move to the next slide. This is a image that we all found of a project that's in Saratoga, New York, that has many similarities. It's almost kind of shocking how similar it is to what this site is presenting us with. But this is a project that they just did. They daylighted a river that runs underground. And just you can see that riparian development, that environment on this, how they've done that, how they have some bridges going across, so you can tie what would be their Water Street on the right-hand side to your Mill Street on the left. And then this plaza area, this hardscape area, I think there was concerns and people that liked it both ways of how much hardscape you would have. This, when you put it in this context, really gives it that flavor that maybe there's, it's okay to have hardscape along part of this park for flexibility and really grabbing that water. So you have that back and forth between nature and hardscape. You can also see on this one just a little bit of that esplanade, although we wouldn't be using shrubs and things to try to block the views into that Mill Street edge. You can still see how this park invites you in and then lets you walk along it and maybe go back out to the street on that. So this was a pretty great image, we thought. We can go to the next slide. And then a couple of more images of that same site, just showing you how shockingly natural it is when you take a different vantage point of it, so that you can really just grab the pure nature of that streamway, the riparian feel, the boulders, being able to get down there, maybe engage in this water, maybe manipulate the elevation of it a little bit. So as urban as the previous picture looked, these have that very natural kind of feel. And then the final picture on this page on the bottom left is just showing you what we're kind of picturing along Mill Street with those trees. So it's an open thing. You can see right through it. There's opportunities for different kinds of seating. There could be activities under there, games, just different things to do. Kind of a flexible, again, space that you could set it up, but it's a very permeable, shady, just provides a good environment, kind of a balance again with the hardscape. And then the next slide. And then this is a quick section that we took through this. This would be looking towards the west. So where you see the Streamway, that's the Campbell Arch in the far distance, in the distance through there. So maybe they're for the adventurous. So you could get down there and walk underneath that, but we still intend to expose it. Then you can see the arcade or the overlook opportunities on Water Street, looking down into the Streamway or across over to the Plaza and Mill Street. And then there were still partial openings along Water Street for that. And then when you get into the Urban Plaza itself, there's the trees with that opening under there. So it's flexible, although we're still providing shade and seating and those kind of things. And then activating Mill Street with some overhead lighting, some nice street lights, banners, certainly people walking along the way and those kind of things. So that was a quick, fun little section through a good meaty part of the site and showing how those connections and overlooks and those kind of things happen in this plan. And I think that's the last picture of this. So if we wanted to, I think, Cody, where were you gonna go to kind of questions
let's
here?
go back to the plan view, and we'll just open it up for discussion and see if we, like we've done before, just raise your hand and we'll grab some of these comments or questions and address them here on the fly.
All right, looks like we got a question from Randall. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Good job this morning. This is exciting. I mean, this is really good. This is well done. We'll just say it that way. But my question is for unmute Chris Dunaway. I've got a big one for you. This, the way they're illustrating the water isn't the way we've kind of been, warned about how much water would actually be allowed to surface or run through the site. Is this in check with what your original vision was for the project, or how does this kind of relate to the reality of what Jordan Creek will look like, or what your plan is? Anybody?
I think this does a much better job of showing, kind of condensing down because we don't think we have near the amount of water that some people envision, and so I think this does a better job of showing that. I also think it's more than what some people are making it out to be. You keep hearing people talk about the 1 CFS, the base flow, but keep in mind that's only for those times when it hasn't rained for several days. There's a lot of times where it rains, just like today or tomorrow, where we get a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch. That hydrograph's going to come up and it's going to slowly go back down. So for several days, we're going to have more than 1 CFS, probably 3 or 4 CFS, and it's going to really, kind of shine during those times. But I also think Olson and their sub-consultants are going to do a good job, and when they get into the design to work out the details to really, exemplify and accentuate the water and find ways to do that.
And just to add to that, Chris, we've talked a lot internally about the water being the right size, right? We love drawing water and including it, but you've seen how it's gone from very large to much more modest. And also the idea that's incorporated here is the idea that we want to move the water. Even if we don't have a lot of overall flow, if we if we are playing with some elevations and we store a little permanent pool and then we get it to run over into another thing and riffles and et cetera, that moving of the water is going to help with the water quality, the perception of the water, all of those kind of things. And we would love to be able to have some of these more larger, although still modest, pooling areas. But we know we're going to have to deal with aeration. And so there may be some aerated areas in here. There may be some small fountains or falls or riffles to help that along to improve the overall water experience, because we know that's a big deal. We don't want to over-promise here, but we are going to work really hard to give a water experience that we can support day in, day out. And as Chris said, that the level of where that water is going to change based on how kind of flashy this can get at times as well. So
Good. I kind of think this is right sized. I feel better about that. So my second question is if you could, somebody real quick, just address the relationship of mill to the railroad tracks and kind of how you see that relationship unfolding, short term, long term, whatever.
yeah, I think short term, it's a challenge to invest a lot of dollars into still having active rail line there. I know that long term, we're hoping that does not continue to be active. And that's in the bigger plan, and certainly the 404 plan helps that. So I think this is what you're looking at is ultimate here, and one of the things that we need to be focused on is starting with great, and then figuring out a way to make those great things happen over time. And so the idea that mill would be fully activated and you would invest dollars into it becoming a sort of festival street, you can do a lot of things curb towards the building or curbs towards park first to activate that street as the final piece of the rail thing sorts itself out, which may take some time. So that's the idea. We know it's important. We want to activate it. This is a reflection of that, but I think mill itself in the roadway itself is a longer term vision, while some of the edge stuff we can do, sort of out of the chute. So.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Randall. Ryan, before we get to you, there's been a few comments in the chat. So Kristen suggested if there was some sort of visual feature that only appears in low amounts of water, which I think would be very cool. And then we have a question for the walkable areas along the water. Is there lighting in the area for evening, overnight?
Yes, there would be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I think from a lighting standpoint, safety and usability, all those things, we want to include on those primary walkways. We want to make sure we're including light at a safe level, so things and people and everything else can be seen, but you can also enjoy it at night. And really lighting up that Campbell Arch underneath and some of that kind of stuff. I'm sure everybody's seen some very dramatic stuff of that. We've done some pretty cool stuff on bridges ourselves. So we really like the idea of what we could express with that arch and how that can sort of play itself out into those other pedestrian areas as well.
All right, Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to. You guys can hear it echo, can't you?
Yes.
That's what I get for trying to get this on a big screen too. So I don't want to belabor the point about the water too much, but I do want to ask a quick question or two really. This does get rid of the existing box culvert, right?
It keeps a portion
you
of it
shaking.
from, Boonville to where we turn turn Water Street down to the south, and then we get rid of it from there. Yes.
So also, this looks like all of the flood flows are going to have to go through the Campbell Arch. I just want to make sure that we don't start working on this design and working toward it as a community, and then all of a sudden one day go, well, wait a minute, that won't actually work. So kind of looking at you, Chris, and some of the other stormwater engineer folks to make sure that when we do have the flood flows that we're expecting for this, that it will be able to accommodate through that arch as opposed to kind of backing up behind it and causing problems.
Yeah, I can jump in on that. I mean, I think, it's understood on our end that there has to be some sort of an expansion. Just that arch by itself, is kind of the visual feature, but for hydraulics, I think it has to extend a little bit to the north. I'm not sure if we're showing that or not, but it's kind of a final design element there that we have to figure out. But internally, we've talked that there has to be some expansion to that bridge in order to make the hydraulics work. So.
All right. I think that is it on questions, unless anyone else has anything last minute. And if you think of anything, we have one more. I'd like to hear about how bike traffic is facilitated through this site for those traveling on the Greenway. Yeah.
I know on a lot of our park projects, some of these sidewalks would end up being, wide enough to accommodate, pedestrians and some bicycling through there. And then there's just some maintenance kind of things that usually happen as well, where they want to get a maintenance gator or those kind of things through there. So, you could picture, that could be a plan if that was a goal, of the community to allow that to happen through the site here.
Yeah, I think it certainly can be easily accommodated. What I like about it is if you go back to the main plan, and we start thinking about the wider context here, if we travel down water just a half a block, we're to Founders. And so coming straight down water, oh, you're scrolling backwards. Okay. Coming straight down water, you can see where you go to the overlook promenade, and then you get into the park on the other side of Campbell, and the walk that is on the south side of the creek actually could be that 10-foot path, that general purpose path that would then take you to the connection over to the West Meadows. And then anywhere along that south side, you could then dive down into the rest of the park. And then obviously you could work your way around it up Boonville and down Mill, et cetera. But providing that linkage path straight down water through the park and then out to West Meadows, we think is a really critical connection here to the bigger picture. As we land off Jefferson over by Founders, from the trailhead there, there is no trailhead now. It just continues on. You get section of Greenway, you get section of Urban Park, urban route, and then you get to go through the RGC Park. So. Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for your questions. Let's move forward to Founders.
Good afternoon, everybody. So for the Founders site, this idea kept a portion of the concrete blocks along the south edge of the site, as well as periodically throughout the northwest corner, or northeast, excuse me. So you'll find that we also removed the fencing and the vegetation around the edges of the park to help kind of open up those views and to help with safety within the park. So I'll start from the east and move to the west. So up in the northeast corner, you'll find the connection to the Jordan Valley Greenway Trail. And then as you're entering the site from that side, you'll find a flex lawn that can be used for a variety of activities and can provide a space for recreational use that kind of complements that playground there, as well as providing a space that can be used for relaxation or kind of create that kind of pause moment if you guys are kind of traveling along the Greenway Trail, and it provides a space for you to kind of either have a picnic or kind of just stop before you move on to the west. And then between the remnants left there on the south side and then the adventure playground, you'll find a history walk that kind of is engaging for anybody walking along there and provides the information about the origins of Springfield and its vast history. And I kind of skipped over the adventure playground there, but there's a couple remnant concrete pieces in there that would help kind of integrate that playground into there and provide a couple spaces for equipment. And then throughout that area too, providing some planting beds with native plantings to add some pops of color and greenery. And then that also kind of helps soften some of those sharper edges and it contrasts some of that rougher concrete block. So then as you move towards the middle of the site, you'll find a centralized plaza that can help or can be utilized for various events and can also provide for smaller gatherings. And then this plaza actually kind of creates a strong axis down the middle of the park that provides a really nice view to that natural outcropping to the south there that would be transformed into a pondless water feature. And then this helps kind of pull the water element from the other two locations into this site, as well as kind of a node to the historic location of the original spring that was found nearby. And then as you move to the west of the site, this is kind of the more entertainment area. So as you enter there, there's a couple structures that could be utilized for either concession stand spaces or restrooms. And then there's a larger activity area, which is that lawn area with the concrete bands that kind of mimic the remnant site. And then that could be for larger events like movie nights or concerts. And then there's the stage area too. So that would have a larger canopy that would kind of cover that site to provide some shade. And it would also be kind of a fun and unique element to the stage. And then you've got the stage house with the different riggings and then a back of house area behind the structure that you could have just different vehicles if needed, pull up and kind of deliver anything to the stage. And then as you move to the south there of the amphitheater, you'll find some more of those concrete remnants that could be utilized for seating during large events, or they provide the stairs up to that top level where that mural walk would be. And then if along Waterside, just to kind of activate that side and kind of pull some of that flow from the other two locations in, we've provided an esplanade to mimic kind of that waviness and provide a little bit more of a fun and playful experience as you're walking along Water Street. So then these are some of the images that we've pulled together. So this top one is an image from Chicago, and it's in their Millennium Park, and it's over top of an amphitheater area and a large lawn. So something similar, the one in this park would potentially be covered and kind of provide a little bit more shade, but would be a cool element to this site that would draw people in. And then the one on the right there, that's kind of that esplanade that we were saying, having some different waviness and flow to the sidewalk there. So it's a little more fun as you're experiencing that side of Water Street. And then the next two images, we've got one that kind of mimics those blocks and what they might look like if they were separated from just the rest of them, if you took out a couple areas. And then the middle one is a pondless water feature.
Thank you. Let's go back to the plan again, and we'll just go through that sequence again. If anyone has any comments or questions, we'll spend some time to answer those at this time. Well, I am not seeing anything, so it looks like we nailed this.
Well, thank you, Rachel. We love it too.
Here we go. For sense of scale, how many people could crowd into that amphitheater?
If when we were looking at the size of that, if we say that there's 10 square foot a person, which is a typical kind of lawn seating calculation, that's about 700 people, 650 to 700 people, pretty comfortably in there. That's not the COVID times here with that. And then closer areas to a stage, if you're just having a small gathering and people are really standing around in there, sometimes those are even as small as 5 square foot, to 6 square foot a person. So, but overall, there's about 650 to 700 in that green area, and then they could spill out into the civic area a little bit, or even be sitting up on that mural zone up higher, looking down into this thing and enjoying that from that vantage point.
I think it's a really good scale for this particular site. It's more of a performance space and not a true what we would consider an amphitheater. We've got a giant space over in East Meadows that could hold thousands and thousands of people. This is a kind of a hybrid between that and a very intimate performance space.
All right, it looks like we've got Tim's hand up. Go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just got a comment that what we're seeing today, I think, is a great distillation of the other things that you showed us the other day, and that this is much simplified, very straightforward. It makes really good use of that which is there, but you took a real critical look at what needs to go and how do we make the real impact on this, and I think you've done that. I think I appreciate what you just said, Cody, about saying, look, this is one size of venue, and the East Meadows has that other size of amphitheater venue. And so I find real comfort in you just being able to rattle that off, and that you're really thinking about all three of these, not as just the project, but it's really all of Jordan Valley. And so good on you for bringing that up and pointing out the rationale here. I think this is a really good arrival point from where you've been earlier this week.
All right, thank you so much, Tim. All right, let's see. We have a few more in the comments. Wish the stage was oriented more towards the fountain in the spring rather than parallel to the street. I guess if someone kind of wants to speak to the decision of where that was oriented.
The orientation really came to be just to try to maximize, the flexibility of the performance space. So giving us, that little bit larger area or the very intimate piece versus, I think the original did just what that question is asking, and it keeps it fairly small. So you're kind of in that 150 person place if that's where you wanted to be. But this kind of gave a lot more flexibility to let this thing go to the little bit larger to the very small.
Well, and another thing that it accomplished was really visually opening up the site. Not only did we remove the fence, but the current backdrop to the stage is a visual impediment into the site, and has resulted in, along with other things, has resulted in some safety issues. So by rotating it, we really were able to open it up to Water Street and allow eyes into the site.
Yeah, and I would also add on to that, the idea that this civic plaza is focused on the spring and the waterfall really gives some weight to that space now. So if you can imagine hosting an event there where you've got high tabletops and you're serving, having a cocktail party or something like that, if you wanted to do that, you can really see how that water feature anchors that civic space, so that you're really getting a lot of bang for your buck as you work your way through the park and the different things you can do. And that plaza also becomes, that's that welcoming entry space when if you have to manage ticketing. right? And lines and people and other stuff, and that becomes that sort of forecourt to the experience, because you would temporary fence off people access if you wanted to do something like that, if it was that kind of event. So that fountain is that sort of anchor in the middle, and everything kind of goes to it. So.
Eric brought up a good point in the chat too, that this positioning allows for a more secure backstage area for the performers, instruments, storage, things like that.
Yeah, and as we do a lot of stage and lawn projects and together, and that back of house area is a critical consideration to be able to perform and to be able to operate. And so being able to secure it, being able to access it, all of those kind of things are really important if you're going to have performances there.
Just a few more in the chat. We'd love to see the line between the park and Water Street become less of a solid line. If the park spills into the place the street occupies, it'll help slow traffic, connect the Greenway Trail, and feeds into the arcade at the daylighted part. And then, yeah, totally agree, Tim, that this looks like it could be a possible wedding venue, which is awesome. And again, you guys will have a chance to comment on all of these on Conveo. So if you think of anything later, please write it down so we can capture it. But if everyone is ready, we can go ahead and move on to Jefferson.
Well, thank you, everyone. With 404 Jefferson, we received a ton of great comments and feedback regarding this. Unfortunately, we're not getting the water park that Darren wanted, but I think this is a good compromise to everything based on the feedback we received this week. So one of the main ideas that filtered to the top when we were revising all of the ideas and developing this particular concept was the potential for repurposing some of the buildings, or in this particular case, the primary building on the southwest, as a space that is very flexible. It could be used as an incubator space. We could have a pottery guild there. It could be a co-working space. It could have pop-up kitchens on the inside. It's just a very flexible space in and of itself, but then maybe adaptive reuse to part of it to incorporate a trend that we've seen recently, where it's this kind of recreational entertainment concept. And, first thing that came to mind in one of the concepts was a chicken and pickle concept. Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be that per se. We've seen smaller venues that have popped up that maybe incorporate these yard games, or a couple of pickleball courts, or it could be, an outdoor sand volleyball court. But the idea of bringing young people, young professionals, people that are able to drink to a place and have fun, and have other people being able to watch them and interact and be part of this whole experience that is happening here. So that's what we're showing on the southwest corner. Now, to just directly to the north of that, there used to be, there is currently a building on the northwest corner that is not able to be salvaged due to where the new box culverts are going in and all of the rework that's being done there. So we still would like to have another type of development. What that is clear, it's not decided, but thought it would be cool to have another building directly on axis from the rooftop that we're showing on the incubator space. You've got this kind of very active visual connection between the two buildings, with what we're showing an overwater deck there, that you feel like you're interacting and touching the water, but you're actually over it. And you've got that connection to nature, but also the connection to the building to the south. As we move to the east from the incubator space, we're met with this nice linear trail system that traverses the entire site, as well as connects down under the bridge to the Jordan Valley Greenway system. And what we're doing is we're calling this trail the Sister Cities Trail. And there are visual cues and connections, maybe markers along the way that relate back to the two sister cities that the city of Springfield has, but also meanders through these meadows or native areas, gets down to the water. It's a very experiential walk as you traverse the site that includes, like some of the previous, well, the RJC plans, the ability for bridge crossings as well as more naturalized stone crossings. So being able to get down right to the water and to touch it. So as you're traversing, let's go back to the incubator space. We see the little pickleball fields is what they're called out there. If you look directly north east, you can faintly see a large, what we're calling this icon tree. And what we're envisioning is just a massive, really cool, iconic tree, whether that's a big old weeping willow out on a peninsula or a really architectural sycamore, but we'd have that and it'd be uplit at night and you'd be able to see it potentially as you're driving on the bridge above and you look down and like, man, what is that cool thing? And then underneath that tree, we were envisioning this really fun treehouse idea. And this would be like a modern treehouse and you could get up there and you're overlooking the water. We've got all these native margin fringe zones with butterflies and birds that are going on. So you could look at bird watching. Anyway, just this really cool architectural element with an architectural form of a tree and just a statement piece for this particular piece of the park. And then from that treehouse, you'd be looking underneath the existing bridge structure. And we're calling this the fun zone. After talking and working with our engineers a little bit more on the flood issue, or not the flood issue, but the water management scenario, how to deal with the pylons that come down and where those meet the water. It's determined that we need a little bit of not reinforcement, but boulders and things around that. We don't want water directly running through there. So we have these little teeth of land that go through. And so underneath that bridge, we can have some sort of discovery walk that ties north and south. You can go out on these little islands and we can have, hammocking areas or giant swings. And then this space could be uplit at night as well with really dynamic or cool interchanging colored lights that act as almost a beacon combined with the tree and just creates this really fun, just fun place. So then as we traverse a little bit to the west, we have what looks like a dock. And we were envisioning a boardwalk that crosses that allows another overlook to look back at the activity zone underneath the bridge, as well as that icon tree. There could be some of that net seating that got scratched from my ideas on something else, but we could put that in there as a fun lounge area. Just the opportunity for unique seating, lounging, walking, people watching, looking at nature, just providing all of these different elements and opportunities to have this experience, which is also picked up in the small little shelters that we've shown along this interactive pathway. And then also one thing that this plan does have that ties in with the theme of the other two sites that we're looking at, Founders and RJC, is that Esplanade. And so along Phelps Street, we've got that meandering landscape, hardscape zone, that fringe zone that is a common thread that we've developed to tie all three of these pieces together, but then also, understanding its connection to, the rest of the trail and park network. And then one thing that this plan also has are the access points from the bridge to get down to below to the site. And then talking about water, this one you'll notice has a little bit more water than maybe we saw at RJC we identified that this site has the ability to hold more and store more water. So when there are flooding events, we have the ability to mitigate some of the downstream effects by capturing that and holding it here before it releases further down site. So as with a lot of these 3 plans, they all incorporate, the esplanade, the art, the history, and really taking different elements from this whole Jordan Valley system and making sure that this feels cohesive and is a good thread in this string of pearls. Okay. So here, when I was talking about the net seating, a lot of people probably didn't know what I was talking about. So upper left is an example of what I was envisioning on that little bridge boardwalk catway, is having just a fun way to catch some rays, look back at what's happening, and maybe nobody's out there, but you're looking at nature, the butterflies again, maybe some ducks are floating around, but just a fun, unique way to enjoy the landscape. And then over to the right is an example of something that we were thinking could occur under the bridge, the ability to just kind of swing in the shade and feel like you're in this really cool spot to hang out. And then bottom left is an example again of those different types of seating that can be built into either the boardwalk or into the side of a hill along the pathway. Just variety is kind of what we were going with there. And then again, Ken had mentioned lighting up the old Campbell Arch and tying, this could really tie the 2 areas together, using the same design elements, but lighting the underside of the bridge in a unique fashion that becomes a dynamic art piece, essentially. And then this is more of the nature aspect. So this concept really combined the fun, really more interactive ideas with relating back to nature. How do we deal with the stormwater, and how do we interact as humans with that? So the big picture here is an example of maybe what that boardwalk could look like. This has this particular one is made of wood, but it's got a built-in seat bench on one side, maybe a little lower tier below, that you can get a little bit closer to the water if you want, or you stay up above. No problems with if and when it would flood. It's easy to be cleaned, and just really it's just the idea of having this cool accessible trail that is also almost an art piece. And then the image to the upper left is an example of a tree, and that's all it is, but it's an iconic tree. It's finding the right species and a tree with the right form and hopefully big enough, but something that will stand out as a staple piece. And then bottom left is just, again, the different types. So in this particular plan, we've got manicured lawns, we have some recreational components, and then we also have the meadows, the fringe zone, and these native plantings that help to mitigate stormwater runoff and capture some of those pollutants before it reaches the riparian stream itself. So this then is just initial thought or idea of what that's what I was calling that tree house could look like. And it could be up higher or lower, but just a quick sketch of how it would relate to the site and the water. And this one, you go up a few steps and you're on this platform. I'm showing a guy doing some bird watching. There's a duck. Nope, there are 2 ducks down there in the water, but it shows how it can be cantilevered out a bit. And then in the background, this is a young iconic tree. It's not nearly big enough. I ran out of trace paper, but then maybe an opportunity to have some sort of cool feature right at the end, a little cocoon seating nook or something that you can swing out and take a look at your surroundings. So that, I believe, sums up the presentation for 404 Jefferson. So we'll go back like the other two concepts and open it up for questions and comments.
All right, so it looks like throughout this, there's been some discussion in the chat over the incubator space. Let me scroll up a little bit. Would love to coordinate what incubator spaces looks like, so we aren't competing with what's happening at eFactory and JVIC across the street. And then some people tossing around ideas for what it could be called. I personally love the cabanas at Jordan Creek. Let's see. And then a few suggestions on how to program it. Brewery with rooftop and waterfront patio is a great adult use with the potential to generate rental income to contribute to ongoing park maintenance and investment costs. Incubator space could incorporate a community kitchen available for rent in support of food and beverage offerings. And then the incubator space could shift to studio space. And then the Foundry in St. Charles was mentioned as a good precedent. All right, do we have any additional questions, comments? All right, well, thank you again. We can go ahead and move on, and we'll be posting the Conveo link pretty soon here.
Very soon. That's the end of all the fun stuff, right? I would say that everybody's worked extremely hard to work our way through the funnel to make sure we were incorporating feedback as we went, and present to you these concepts today. We are, because we're never really done, we are going to ask for your comments on these concepts from today, the narrowed concepts here. And we're going to ask you to go back to Conveo, into the charrette Conveo, and give us your final comments on these plans. Again, I would ask you to, if you have general comments, to put them off of the plan, but the specific ones you have about specific areas and ideas and thoughts on specific things, make sure you're kind of docking them onto the area that you're talking about, so we have a reference point for your comments. That has been extremely helpful as we've gone back and forth through all the comments that we have received. Okay, so next steps, we talked about the Conveo site and your feedback. So what happens after today? Well, we have further refinement that we have to do. We have to start coming to grips with, we've talked technically about the water. We have quite a bit of other work to do to sort of ground the concepts and refining them. We have quite a bit of coordination that we need to do with the city. We're going to do work sessions with the council so that they get to see this information, they get to interact with it, and they understand it. So it won't be the first time that they see it, it's sort of at the end. And solicit comment, and then we're going to bring all that stuff back to another open house. Well, you'll see all of that refined information. We'll take that final round of input, and then we'll present what we'll call final concepts to the council, and then from there we're going to go on to design, because ultimately we're trying to get this thing done. And so the design portion that will move forward to construction will be for the RJC site. And the others are really just that, so we know a direction and we can start putting plans together to move those forward in reality, that we can capture anything that happens, momentum, opportunities, anything else and related to the 404 or the founder site. So we can really, again, string all of these pearls together into something that's really pretty magical, I think, for the community. So with that, again, I just want to say thanks for all of the time that you committed to us for this. We talked several times that, we didn't get to interact with you personally. That's really our favorite part of this whole thing, is to put stuff up on the wall and then get you to react to it, and then have all those mini conversations that we have in small groups and individually about what we see. It's really that sort of feeder part of this whole process for us as designers. But you guys performed exceptionally well. Thank you for all of that support. Thank you for all of that time and really helping to make all of this better, and all of this and really grounded in Springfield and what Springfield wants to see, and grounded in the Jordan Creek area as well of downtown. So thank you for that. It's been really fun 3 weeks for us. My staff is exhausted, so I think it's time to crack open a cold one for them probably at this point, and have a great weekend. So thank you, everybody. We really enjoyed it, and there's more to come.